Hola, I'm Jorge Ramos.
And I'm Paula Ramos.
And this is The Moment.
Just this morning, House Democrats released more emails showing that Trump knew more about Epstein's abuses than he previously acknowledged. It's past time for Congress to restore its role as a check and balance on this administration and fight for we, the American people.
So that was the newest member of Congress, Adelita Grijalva, who's not only making history for being the first Latina ever to represent the state of Arizona, but also because it took Speaker Mike Johnson 50 days to swear her into Congress. And so the question is, why did it take Speaker Johnson over 50 days?
Well, Paula, perhaps because she was the final vote needed in the House of Representatives to put in motion the release of the Epstein files.
So when we come back, we'll be talking to Congresswoman Adelita Grijalva, who's now representing Arizona's 7th Congressional District. We'll talk Epstein files. We'll talk President Trump. We'll talk about the future of the Democratic Party, but also about the way in which she is managing the immense grief she feels after losing her father, Congressman Raul Grijalva, and how she's thinking about building his legacy and filling in those huge shoes as she's now taking power.
And not only that, the interview is being done from the same office where Raul Grijalva used to work. So there's an emotional weight to that. And also, we asked her, did he ask her to run? I think the answer is going to be really interesting. So Adelita Grijalva, when we come back.
Okay, well, Congresswoman Grijalva, thank you so much for joining us and welcome to The Moment.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's such an honor to be here.
Bienvenida.
Bienvenida. So we are very excited to be talking to you about, of course, your historic win, the significance of this, what this means for Arizona. But I think before we get there, we wanted to start with some of the breaking news, because in less than 24 hours, the House of Representatives will finally be voting to release the Epstein files. And of course, your vote was the key to making that happen. And so that's where I want to start. What is the importance of that vote?
So this has been an issue for years. And so much of what this administration promised to do when Trump was running is like, day one, I'm going to release these files. And then as soon as he gets the opportunity to do it, does everything he can to obstruct that from coming out. So, Speaker Johnson in the summer sent everyone home a week early to avoid this vote. So Democrats did what they had to do. There were 4 Republicans that joined, and I'm glad of that. And I find it very interesting now that Trump is saying, well, yeah, I think everyone should vote to release them.
But what changed his tune? What do you think made that shift?
I think remember when there was an investigation, so the Biden administration couldn't release information out. But Trump just requested that certain Democrats be investigated. My concern is there is a clause in there that if there is an active investigation, that certain documents will not get out. And I think he's sort of counting on that. So I don't think it's a change of heart in, the 23,000 pages. He's mentioned quite a bit and spending a lot of time with Epstein, about him spending time with victims. And so for me, I had the opportunity to meet some of the survivors and also meet with other people who have been trafficked and abused in that way. And it's so important to be able to, if at all possible, get justice. And that's where I was coming from. The other political stuff, there are implications, obviously, but honestly, for those victims, when you look them in the eye, they want to be able to move forward, and they can't when their credibility keeps getting questioned. They keep getting targeted. So I want the survivors to have justice finally.
So you don't think that actually President Trump is changing, because he might be saying to Republicans, okay, you can vote for that, but then what's going to happen in the Senate? And I wonder if he really wants to do this, then can he just talk to the DOJ and say, hey, release everything?
Exactly. He could already release them. There is an active subpoena. He's doing everything he can, and so is Bondi, to prevent that information from coming out. All he has to do is say, go ahead and release everything. But I really, I mean, once he had the opportunity to look at what the implications for him personally in those files, I believe that's why he's done everything he can to avoid it.
According to some emails written by Epstein and released by the Democrats, Donald Trump spent time with a victim and, quote, knew about the girls. Of course, he has denied everything. So do you think that the president actually was a witness to a crime?
I do. I think there are implications of it. I mean, he literally said, Epstein quoted, I can bring him down. I mean, he obviously had information, and we won't know the full implications until all of the files are released. But the initial batches mention him throughout the files. And when Epstein says verbatim of Trump, I am the one that will be able to take him down, he must have some information there. And then there's a lot of private correspondence between Maxwell and Epstein that speak about Trump.
So if that's the case, how should Congress proceed? I mean, do you think there's enough information to investigate the president or even to impeach Donald Trump?
I think that's one of the reasons why everyone wants this information out, aside from the sobrevivientes, the survivors. Periodically, things will get stuck in there.
That's what we do here.
The word. I think that it's important for them to be able to finally see some people prosecuted for what they did to them when they were children. But here, I don't know. And that's why I think it's so important for the information to get out.
We started this conversation by talking about the survivors. We know that you had two of the survivors that were present during your swearing-in speech, but I'm actually curious about the Republicans that were also in that room, those that are still siding with President Trump, those that perhaps are still apprehensive about releasing the files. And I'm just curious about, just in these couple of days, like, how do you think they're sort of reconciling this idea of hearing the testimonies and hearing these survivors and facing them, while also dealing with the reality that this Republican Party has historically wanted to release these files? And so, like, how do those Republicans navigate that?
I think they're having a very hard time. And honestly, one of the things I learned very early on in whatever you do, you have your values. Like, those are what grounds you. That's how you know who you are. And when somebody is pushing you into a position that you have to question whether that's something you want to do, if that's something, like, would you be proud to tell your children and grandchildren what you did? I can look in the mirror and say, yep, I sure am. I'm very proud. My kids were there, gave me a standing O. They were proud of me. And those Republicans who are choosing to sort of be silent, I think are going to have a very hard time, because when history shows this period of time, they're going to be on the wrong side of it.
Do you think there's this natural solidarity among the Republican women? Of course, we've seen Marjorie Taylor Greene and other female members of Congress that have been very outspoken about this. But is there this natural solidarity between sort of the MAGA women?
I think that that's one of the reasons why I thought it was very important to bring two of the survivors that were willing to come forward. Because I think it's very different when you see someone, like, that's a real person. It's not just a page in some sort of file. Like, that's a person who had to live through one of the most, I couldn't even imagine the horror that they have to live with every day, knowing the things that happen to them and still being questioned, sometimes by women, about whether they're credible or not. So that's why I wanted to bring them forward. And actually, there were some Republicans that stood up and gave him a standing ovation as well. So I do believe in this issue. Nobody should be protecting pedophiles. It's abhorrent. Right. I mean, anybody who's standing there saying, well, the one quote from Megyn Kelly who said, well, he liked them young. That's grosero. That's disgusting. It's disgusting. These are children and young women. And I don't think anybody should be protecting them, and I won't. And I'll call it out anytime I see it.
So do you think that this issue is paralyzing the White House and is actually derailing the Trump presidency?
I don't know what Trump is. I don't know everything that Trump is trying to protect. But when you get a little, this is just like the tip of the iceberg and the information that's included in these Epstein files. And for him to be mentioned that many times, you knew what was happening, supported what was happening. And now I believe that we're going to finally be able to have some proof of that. And I don't know how anyone could stand in support of this administration and Trump specifically, knowing that if he was not personally involved, he was protecting pedophilia and a ring that victimized thousands of girls.
I think it's we've spent a lot of time on Epstein, and I think the real news is that you have made history, and I think you wanted to toss that to the Congresswoman's speech. So I'll let you do that because we've been talking about this moment for a very long time. So I know this is special for you.
We wanted to go to the ceremony where you became the first Latina ever from Arizona to go to Congress. No, what a moment! And I remember me along with millions in all the country, either online or on TV, saw you, and personally, I think you met the moment. So let's listen.
And thank you to La Gente of Southern Arizona for making history, electing me the first Latina, the first Chicana from Arizona to ever go to Congress. Este momento es histórico para nuestra comunidad. Es un honor ser la primera Latina en representar a Arizona en el Congreso y les aseguro que aunque soy la primera, no será la última.
After nearly 2 months of delay, what was it like at that moment to finally take the oath? How were you feeling?
Yeah, it's a wide range of emotion because one, I was very desesperada. Like we want this to happen already a long time ago. Been waiting a long time. I honestly didn't. I didn't try to project anything. Like when people said, "So how do you feel?" I'm like, until it's done, I don't really know. And still to this point, I don't know. I mean, I remember being up there in the gallery when my dad was first sworn in. And it was I remember seeing it and my mom put the pin on him and it was so cool. But it was not like this. It was funny because we had somebody come and just to sort of explain like where I was going to be standing and don't be distracted if people are talking amongst each other and, everyone's going to be really focused on their own thing and you'll just be speaking, but pretend you're speaking to somebody not in the room because it will just be really noisy and blah, blah, blah. You could hear a pin drop in there. And that was a very different experience than I was prepared for because the room looks so large, right? And then you get in there and it's very quiet. And if someone's whispering, you can hear it. So one of the Representante Velázquez, when he said, "And now come to the well," and you hear, "Finally," that was her. That, like she was right here. So when, there were a couple of people clapping and whistling and that, I heard it all. And I'm glad that I could be present in that moment because it's something that I'll never forget. But I'm so glad that my family was there and my mom was there because, I'm the mom of 3 teenagers. So I was like, okay, kids, it's finally happening. They're like, yeah, right. Sure. But
and I think that's kind of the scene that played out, right? Obviously, it's this joyous, historic moment that was at the same time overshadowed by a Speaker Johnson that did this incredibly unwarranted delay on your swearing-in ceremony, and I'm wondering if you've actually been able to confront him about that, since you've been in office.
Well, so we literally walked out, did the speech, and then this woman was like, "Okay, we got to get you over here to do the official picture," and when I walked around the corner, he was talking to Pelosi. And she said, "You should have sworn her in. You should have sworn her in." And they're walking. And he said, "Well, as we're walking," he said, "None of this was personal." I said, "Sure did feel pretty personal."
You
when
said
you're
that.
Yeah, I did. Oh, no. That's part of whether you like me or not. I'm just going to say, I just say it. So I said, they felt very personal. And I said, if you ever actually want to have a real conversation about what it's like to have the keys to a door and walk into an office and not be able to do anything in there, let me know. Because I couldn't do anything. Like We can't answer the phones to do what? I don't have anybody doing constituent services. We don't have people at the front. I mean, right now we're still not fully staffed because it's very difficult to hire during a shutdown. But then to promise people, I promise I'll pay you sometime. I don't know when.
Yeah.
It's hard to get people to leave their jobs to come for a big question mark. So that was hard. And then understand that I'm only in this position because my dad passed away. So that I'm like, okay, don't cry, don't cry. Talk myself into try not to cry because it's just very difficult. Yeah.
Of course. Yeah.
And it still moves you, as we can see.
Oh,
right?
always. Yeah. I cry every day. Literally every day I cry. And I think that that's okay. I think people need to understand that grief is, it comes in waves. And honestly, people talk to me all the time about, oh, I loved your dad. I'm like, me too. And if strangers are going to cry to me, well, then of course it's natural. And I think it's good for people to see that you can't just shut it off. I can't. Maybe some people can, but that's not been my experience. I'm literally sitting in his office, So I'm sort of surrounded by just memories here. And I have to make my own, but still honor him.
Yeah, I think it's very symbolic. I remember I was watching the ceremony on CNN, and the anchors were saying, we usually don't do this. I mean, showing the ceremony, no? For hundreds of members of Congress, that doesn't happen. But it was such an important moment. And you were right there. And that's why I say that you met the moment, because
Thank you.
It was so difficult, emotionally and politically. And then, I mean, I'm always just checking on that side, but you spoke in Spanish at a moment when thousands of Latino immigrants are being persecuted for speaking Spanish. And I wonder if for you it was a sign of defiance. You were saying, here in Congress, yo, Adelita, voy a hablar español.
Yep. And la única cosa que me dijeron es que tienes que traducir todo.
I see.
That was all. They're like, you say whatever you want to say, but at some point you need to translate it exactly. And then you could totally hear my pocha, right? Because I was like, dang it. I was like, no. But I do that a lot.
I really love that, the accent, everything.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah.
I do. And I do a lot of code switching, and it's not always proper, but I'm like, well, that's very Chicana. Very Chicana. Yeah.
Did you and your father, I was just going to ask on that note, did you and Congressman Grijalva speak in English or in Spanish, or what was that communication like?
When I was little, so my mom is from New Mexico, and my grandma, her mom, was from Wisconsin. So she didn't speak Spanish. And if you've ever spoken to anyone from New Mexico, they have a different accent that my tata, my dad's dad, would say, no puedo entender el Georgie. My grandpa's name was Georgie. No le puedo entender. It's they're both speaking Spanish to each other, but you're like, I don't think they understand each other. So for when I was little, my dad was very much involved in the Chicano movement and wanted to make sure that his kids spoke Spanish. So I didn't speak English until I started kinder. My nana took care of me, and my mom had to learn Spanish to be able to talk to me, but it was also very important for her. So when I got to kinder and learned English, I stopped speaking Spanish because I'd hear it all the time. Actually, I had a colleague on a board, my previous board, that said, I can't understand her with that accent. And I was like, well, get yourself a translator then, because I'm going to whether you like it or not. But I think it's that sort of acknowledging that there are a lot of people that feel very much afraid. And I wanted to be able to, as often as possible, incorporate some Spanish so they could hear that, I'm not here, I'm representing Southern Arizona, and I'm going to do my best to represent them. But if me being up here and speaking Spanish speaks to you, I want to encourage you. And also, it's a good peer pressure for other members of Congress. If you speak other languages, throw them in there, because I think it's important for people to hear us as often as possible.
So we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to be talking about the shutdown and the future of the Democratic Party with la congresista Adelita Grijalva.
Muchas gracias.
We're back. We have a conversation with Congresswoman Adelita Grijalva. Suena bien, ¿verdad? Congresista Grijalva.
Suena muy bien.
Suena muy bien. Me gusta mejor que electa.
Ya la
Yeah.
congresista.
Yeah.
Pues la congresista is stepping into a Democratic Party and a Congress that obviously just witnessed the longest shutdown in American history. But you're also stepping into a party that many say perhaps lost a very important leverage, right? Some Democrats were, of course, siding with Senate Republicans, even without any guarantees of extensions of the Obamacare tax credit. And so I'm wondering if you think that was a mistake.
I do, because Speaker Johnson has never committed to having that same vote. So even if soon in the Senate they have a vote, it doesn't guarantee any outcome. So I feel like we went through a lot of suffering as a nation, and federal employees specifically, without any kind of end in sight for when they were going to get paid. But every single federal employee I talked to was like, keep fighting for us. We know what you're doing. This is the worst thing. I want us to like reopen the government, but continue to fight for us. And so to sort of, not get any real assurances, and not in the House either, because Speaker Johnson was asked specifically, and he tap danced around that question, has still not committed to having a vote. And so here we are. We're going to have another discharge petition to talk about this extension. That's the frustration. And then when you have, senators that have built in like a potential $1 million payday for themselves, how do you vote for that? How do you vote? I mean, I just don't understand how you do, especially when the American people are not gaining anything. We're still going to have rural hospitals that are going to be threatened if we don't deal with these ACA subsidies. There are families that are not going to be insured, and then they're going to go to our emergency rooms, which is also an already stressed system. I just don't know how we move forward without getting these basics. It's a basic, fundamental, I believe, a right to be able to take care of yourself and go see a doctor when you need to.
Yeah, and I think also even strategically beyond that, right? I think the Democratic Party did seem to be having a lot of momentum from, of course, the electoral wins that we saw here in New York City, in Virginia, in California, to, I think, an American public that was siding with Democrats when it came to the shutdown. And then, of course, President Trump's approval rating, which are abysmal at this point. And so I guess a lot of people believe that this may be painting the Democratic Party in a sort of weaker light. And what does one do with that?
Well, and then the other is that we just came off a historic Tuesday where so many Democrats won, but like not just moderate Democrats. We're talking people that were pushing like a very progressive agenda. And that's when you talk to people specifically about this issue, people always say, well, I'm a moderate or I'm a liberal or a progressive or whatever. It's like, talk to me about what your issues are. And when you really pull those things out, they're all progressive values. And so this fight about healthcare is so frustrating because Republicans have been tearing apart the Affordable Care Act since its inception. And they have had 15 years to come up with something better. 15 years. I just, you have to point, the finger should go like that accusations of, not working for the American people are squarely in the Republicans' area right now, especially when it comes to this issue.
And I think you're touching on, I think what is kind of this key existential question that the Democratic Party is always having, right? Like, is the party sort of too far left is what you hear, or to your point, is the party not doing enough to embrace these progressive values? And I think you have a unique perspective as someone that is representing a deep blue city within a battleground state that is now purple. Like, what is your take when it comes to that question?
I think that we need to embrace progressive values. I think we need to talk about renewable energy. We need to talk about protecting our environment, public education, comprehensive immigration reform. I mean, these are big issues, and nobody's willing to talk about it. I was just at a gun control panel. I was like, why is it as a parent, if my kid takes my car and kills someone, I'm responsible? But if I'm not a responsible gun owner and leave my guns out and my kid goes and kills somebody, I'm not responsible. I mean, there's just so many areas here, especially in Congress, where big money plays a big role. And we have to call it out as often as possible, because I didn't take any corporate money. We raised a lot of money from individual donors, and I think that's important. And we have to, End Citizens United is a whole big other conversation. So when we're talking about the things that people are so appalled by, like of politicians, so much of that is this big money that is pushing people around. And we need more public servants in these positions and less politicians that are worried about getting elected.
But let me ask you about 2026 and 2028. We had in this podcast Soran Mamdani before he was elected mayor of New York City, and he was saying something really interesting. He said that for Democrats to win, it's not enough just to criticize President Trump. That is not enough. That there has to be a positive message. And I wonder if Democrats have lost that message. What's the message?
It's giving hope to people. And that overwhelmingly is what I heard when I was running for office. It's what we heard with Mamdani. It's what we heard with the governor races in New Jersey. And they want people to give them hope that it's going to get better. Part of the frustration with so many people is that you keep voting and thinking you're voting the right way. And then people get into those offices and there's just like a lot of excuses. Well, let's talk about what the real issues are. And if you actually want progress on any of these things, you have to get rid of the extremists that are not willing to talk. Even like, ni me saludan. Like, you walk down the hall and like, I'm invisible.
Really?
Like, yes, it's so weird, because that's not the Congress my dad was in 22 years ago. 22 years ago, you could have a Republican, like my dad would sit right next to them. They didn't ever agree on one thing, but they talked about sports or they talked about grandkids or something else. That's not the reality here, because you have so many people that have just pledged allegiance to Trump. They don't care about the people that they're representing. And so I'm very encouraged and going to do my best to go out and do the same thing, where when you have Democratic candidates, senators, representatives going out into deep red areas in their state or across the country and say, I'm going to do a town hall here because your representative isn't willing to. I think it makes a big difference. Bernie Sanders is doing it everywhere. I think we have to do smaller versions of that for those of us who can't draw as big of a crowd. But I think it's those face-to-face conversations about what do you really want to see? And so much of this ideology stuff is crazy. I have never heard of so many people that were so obsessed with like what is under someone's clothes or who they love. Like, why do you care? How does it affect your life? And this Republican Party, they are so obsessed with like getting big government out, unless it's what they want. And then they're going to tell us they want to script everything we do.
And I would even say even some of your Democratic colleagues, I think, are at times sort of afraid to embrace some of these more nuanced, quote unquote, controversial issues, right?
They're not that controversial. Making sure that we can all breathe and have clean air and water is a big deal. And especially in an area that, like mine, we're a Superfund site. My dad and my tias and my nana and tata and everyone around them drank poison water for like 10 years. There are cancer clusters all over CD7 from mining, from pollution, from PFAS. And that's fundamental. Like, water is life. If we don't have it, we don't have life. So, and when you talk about, like, that's why I'm so passionate about it. I went to the San Rafael Valley and watched this ridiculous wall being put up that is sucking up millions of gallons of water, destroying habitat, destroying migration opportunities. People are not crossing. It's animal migration. It's not people, because no one is going to cross in this area. But it is just a ridiculous. It frustrates me so much that we can't pay for food for people. We can't make sure that they can go see a doctor. But you can spend hundreds of millions of dollars on a completely useless border wall that is not going to do anything to solve immigration. It's crazy.
So you've talked about many different issues and the idea of hope, esperanza. But I wonder if the next big theme is going to be affordability. Everybody's going to be running on this.
I think it is because it makes a difference. I mean, I'm a mom with 3 kids. I have been out of work for almost 9 months. Things were not easy. They were not. My husband's a librarian, has a master's degree, has a good job at a community college. But I have a daughter in college, a freshman. I have a junior in high school and a freshman in high school. It was very difficult. If I didn't have like the family that I have and the network of support to help me, it would have been very hard. And so I can only imagine people that are fully employed. They work 40 hours a week, and their companies, in order to cut costs, don't offer them healthcare, don't offer them good benefits. How many people that are working full-time qualify for SNAP benefits? That is a problem. Billionaires and their companies, they're getting rich off the backs of working people. We have to cut those tax breaks. Like, there's so many things that I think we have to really focus on. And I believe very strongly, especially here, there's a lot of like Dem versus R, but there are some things that we should be able to work together if we get people that are willing to talk to each other. And if in the midterms we change some of these very extremist members of Congress to ones that are willing to roll their sleeves up and actually get to work.
We have to take a last break, and then we'll come back. And now we'll continue our conversation with Congresswoman Adelita Grijalva. Paola.
So much of what you're doing now, Congresswoman, is, of course, your own principles, your own agenda, your own values, but it's also about sort of building on the legacy of your father. Obviously, Congressman Grijalva was in the House of Representatives for 22 years before he passed away in March. And once you decided to run for office, I'm wondering how it was for you to mourn his death while also sort of campaign. What was that experience like?
Yeah, I don't want to relive that one ever again. That was really hard. And I think that I knew what I had to do and I was going to get it done. But there were many times that I'm like, I need a break. I need to walk away, and I'm going to come back because, I mean, there are people that have known me my whole life and never seen me cry, ever. And now it's like an almost everyday occurrence that it's like, literally when we started this interview, they brought this. It's gonna happen. Things are going to happen here. And, I knew my dad had like told me, he's like, you can always cry later. You can cry later. You can cry later. And I'm like, oh, so, and I never wanted to do this. I never wanted to run for Congress.
You never thought about it?
No, I was very happy being on the Board of Supervisors. I had, my kids, I'm very metida in their lives, probably too much so. So I'm totally a hovercraft parent. I'm like the mariachi mom that drives them everywhere. Drama mom that's like bugging the school about, things. I love that. And I don't want to miss those things. And I knew that it would be a big sacrifice for all of us. But, my youngest, Joaquin, I asked each one of them, like, so this is what's happening. If you tell me not to do it, I'm not going to do it. And so he said, well, do I have to move to DC? He's a freshman in high school. And I'm like, no, you don't have to. You don't have to. I have to go back and forth. Okay. And he goes, well, if you don't do it, who will? And I said, well, I don't know. He said, will they work as hard as you do? And I'm like, I'm going to go with no. And then he said, well, what would Tata say? And I was like, ugh. Well, that was the end. It's like Tata would say, you run. And literally at his funeral, there were members of Congress that came up to me and said, your dad said he was going to stick it out until you were ready. And I'm like, oh, it's too much. So I felt like my back was against the wall and I had to show whether I was going to fight for it or not. So I'm glad I did, because when we were in the middle of that primary and I was looking at the other candidates, I was like, if I wouldn't have run, I would have been so angry with myself. Because minimally, you have to be able to at least fight for it. And that primary made me fight. And then I wanted it, because I'm like, okay, if these are the options and you're not going to bring like this legacy of progressive values to Congress to fight like my dad did, then I have to fight you for it. And
during his final days, did he ask you to run?
Yes, he did.
He did.
And I said no. I said no. I'm
Is
like,
that
No
true?
way.
You said no?
I said no. I was like, no,
So,
Dad, no quiero. And he, like,
so
this
he
was,
never knew that you were gonna run?
no. Mm-mm.
How?
Well,
I told him at the end, because he said, I think you're going to do it. I think you're going to do it. And I was like, I don't know, Dad. And then like, so his friends that would come in, like people that have worked with him a long time, and they're like, take care of Adela. She's going to need some help. She's going to be sad. I was like, so he knew I was going to do it, but I did it.
Well, I was surprised because I thought there was a family plan. Said, okay, if
Oh
something
no,
happens
this
to
is after. Yeah. No, I'm the oldest daughter. So I always wanted to make sure that his funeral went exactly the way he wanted it.
Mhm.
And he didn't tell me everything he wanted. This is what happened. We went to his friend's funeral when I was like 22, and his friend was Irish. And they had like the Catholic ceremony, and then they had like an Irish wake. And they had music and whiskey and Guinness, and people were laughing and telling stories and crying. He goes, this is what I want. I said, okay. So I had to figure out how to give him that. But still, I knew that there were a lot of people that wanted to celebrate his life with us. And how do I balance those things? And also, he was not pretentious at all. He didn't care about the pomp and circumstance of any of it. But I believe me and my sisters believed he deserved it. So that's why we're like, okay, we're not going to do this, but we will do like the guards coming in with him. I'm like, okay, we can do. There's certain little things that we let go just because I thought it would be, he deserved it. He deserved it.
So you are at his office right now. He used to sit where you are,
See, yes.
that same chair.
No, I want the chair back. They took it. I guess what they do, they have to clean everything out like it's a new person because,
okay.
everything. So there was nothing here. And then they resurfaced the desk, I think, or gave me a new one, and they gave me like a new chair. So we are going down to like where they have all the supplies and like all the furniture. I'm like, I want to find the chair. I want the groove in. I want the whole thing. I want the old one. Yeah.
I was going to ask, this isn't almost the first time that you're sitting in his chair, right? Because you both of you, you and your father, got your start at the governing board of the Tucson Unified School District, right? You were the youngest person to serve on that board, and you served for almost 2 decades. So how are you carrying on that legacy of education?
Well, I asked for education and workforce as a committee. I think it's really important after Trump has decimated our Department of Education to have someone who literally still knows what it means when you cut certain programs and how it's going to impact the most vulnerable students. And then someone has to be there to fix it because we're going to have to rebuild everything. I mean, he put in someone that has no background in education, just like he put in someone who's not a doctor. I mean, they're just like, it's the most unqualified administration ever, objectively unqualified.
So it'll continue to be a top priority for you, of course.
Oh, absolutely. I asked for natural resources and education workforce, which was both my dad's committees that he was on. I think it's really important. Tribal sovereignty is very important, protecting our environment and speaking up for those who don't feel like they have a voice. It's a value that I carry.
So let's just finish with a song. I'm sure they've asked you this song about La Adelita for so many times. For those who are not familiar with it, it was a revolutionary song, 1910 Mexico. There was a nurse called apparently Adelita, and I think she was a feminist, no, una guerrera, a feminist. Is that why your parents chose your name, Adelita, a fighter?
Well, I was supposed to be Shirley. My middle name is Shirley because my mom's mom was from Wisconsin and her name was Shirley. I was the first granddaughter and my mom was getting a lot of pressure. And so I would have been Shirley Grijalva. And my dad was like, come on, most of my family's not going to be able to pronounce Shirley. Like, perfect. So it was going to be Maribel.
Okay.
And the nurse came. I was nameless for like 8 days. The nurse came and looked and said, "Oh, Maribel." And my mom's like, "No, give it back. And so my dad was picking us up. I was supposed to be Raul. Like I was supposed to be a boy. Everyone thought so. I was going to be a junior. And then I came out and I'm like, here's. So when my dad was coming to pick up my mom and me, he was in the car and was listening to the radio, and the song "Sí, Adelita" came on, and he was like, "What about Adelita?" And she's like, "Okay, we'll do that." So that, like, as we were rolling out, they gave her the little form to sign my name, and that's how it happened. And I do feel like, it's a guerrera, it's a fighter.
Yeah.
That's how they raised me, to be very outspoken. I do believe I'm the son that my dad didn't have. Like, he's like, I didn't need one. I had you. We're good. But I'm like one of 3 girls. He had all girls. He has 2 sisters, just literally surrounded by women until I had my sons. And then he's like, yes, we have a team.
But último, I have to ask, just because my dad gives me, I would say, pretty good advice in life. What do you think your father would be telling you right now?
He would just say, like, you just got to keep working at it. You're doing a good job. Don't get cocky. Do your homework. Like, just remember who you're fighting for. And he always said that. Like, my nana would say too, naciste con un nopal en la frente. So don't forget that. You don't forget who you are. And Washington did not change my dad. My dad changed some things here in Washington. And so I have to remember that that's a legacy that you keep with you, and just be the same person. And it's been really, people have been very kind. A lot of hugs, a lot of strangers that I never would have known otherwise. And so in a way, Speaker Johnson I had to look through the silver lining. And the silver lining in this case is a lot of people know me and know of what I want to be able to accomplish here in Washington, because I had to wait 50 days to be able to do my job.
Thank you so much for talking to us. And now you know that millones dependen de usted.
Yeah.
Usted sabes, ¿no?
Ya
It's
sé,
a heavyweight. Yeah.
Ya es una responsabilidad muy grande, pero estoy lista.
Se nota.
Thank you so much. Muchísimas gracias.
Muchas gracias.
Gracias,
Okay.
congresista.
Adiós, congresista.
We spoke with Representative Grijalva just hours before the House voted to release the Epstein files. On Tuesday evening, as we closed this episode, the Senate was set to pass the measure automatically as early as Wednesday morning, and the White House indicated President Trump would sign it as soon as it reached his desk.
The Moment is a production of Radio Ambulante Studios in partnership with iHeart's My Cultura podcast network.
Our staff includes Daniela Alarcón, Laura Rojas Aponte, Miguel Santiago Colón, and Lisa Cerda, with help from Paola Leán, Diego Corso, Natalia Ramírez, and Elsa Liliana Ulloa. The CEO of Radio Ambulante Studios is Carolina Guerrero.
Executive producers at iHeart are Arlene Santana and Leo Gomez. Pablo Cabrera, Dylan Unger, and Mark Hansen also serve as producers.
Sound design, final mix, and a theme song by Elias Gonzalez. If you like this episode, share the word.
Recommend The Moment to anyone who might enjoy unpacking all of these complicated times with us.
And if you like The Moment, pero también te gustan los podcasts en español, check out Radio Ambulante Studios. Their show Radio Ambulante, El Hilo, and Central are really worth a listen. I'm Jorge Ramos.
And I'm Paola Ramos.
Thanks for listening.